It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive, and the last Steelers Afternoon Drive of 2024. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, on your afternoon drive, and the light is out. We're recording a little bit earlier because I got off work early, and this is like a throwback because we don't see this very often anymore.
It's a good feeling. I like it. I miss being here. I do. This is good. This is the original, the OG format of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And
it feels fitting for the last one of 2024 as well.
It does. I've missed the drive home in the daylight in general. This is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I want to talk about some of that stuff when we get to the end of this, just kind of give an appreciation and like recap everything that's happened here in 2024 for this show on this channel in general. But we appreciate you guys. You know that we give you shout outs basically every single week. Alan, but before we get there, just run down some news stuff. Obviously, get into a couple topics as we always do. But first thing, I think people may be a little bit surprised to see some guys return to Steelers practice today. This could have been happening at like any time, but I think just randomly, I don't think that I was sitting here today expecting to see Roman Wilson, Cole Holcomb, Logan Lee all back at practice today. Maybe shed some light on that. This doesn't mean a return is imminent for any one of those guys or any of them at all. But they were working in some capacity today.
Yeah, I kind of doubt that we're going to see any of them in a game, but you know, there's guys that have been working hard all offseason on the injured reserve, or all season, I should say, on the injured reserve list. And, you know, this is kind of the reward. I guess Holcomb's technically on the pup. But, you know, I don't know about Holcomb necessarily. But, you know, I feel like pretty confident the other two guys have been healthy for a little while. And the question was just, well, especially Lee. I mean, I think he's been healthy since October. The question was just when they would decide to open this 21-day practice window. And now, you know, it's kind of use it or lose it, right? Like, if you don't activate them now, what's the point? So they activate them now. If the Steelers do happen to go in and win their first-round playoff game, the Steelers will have to make a decision there that week about whether they want to activate these guys or not. I would assume this gives them a little bit of, you know, ready depth. If they go into the playoffs and somebody gets hurt at one of those positions, they have a guy who's been with the team all year, who has now been practicing over the last couple of weeks, that could slide in and fill in. I don't think there's any anticipation from my understanding that any of these guys are actually going to play unless someone else opens a spot for them.
I know you posted the videos so people can go and look for themselves. I was able to obviously watch the videos too, but just from your eyes, how did you feel like they looked physically, any of those guys?
Better than I thought. Specifically, Holcomb and Wilson, really, I thought were moving well. Wilson moving better now than he did after the ankle injury before the hamstring. Like, looks like the guy I saw on tape in college, really, for the first time since OTAs. And, you know, look, he still had a lot of work to do then. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk that he's going to be all, you know, nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. I'm just saying it looks good physically right now, better than it has in a while physically, and I think that's a big start for him.
Has you had any conversation with him since the injuries and stuff like that, or no?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious about if he feels like, I mean, obviously for a young player, you need the reps, like, so that's where the benefit is. But I was just curious, I guess, if there's anything that he did or like while taking a back seat was able to learn or anything like that. If there was any benefit or silver lining, I should say, to the injury for him.
I don't think you're going to get much out of that. I mean, certainly it's you know, feels like a wasted season for Roman Wilson. I guess he will learn some things about kind of the way, you know, a pro season goes and the sort of rhythm of things, and, you know, everything won't be totally new to him like he's a rookie next season. But, you know, you're looking at the Calvin Austin path probably.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Is I was going to say there's another guy in that room that, you know, basically had a lost first season in the NFL, and I was wondering if there was anything that he could take away from him, not just like in the same room, but also basically the same spot, like where you're hoping Roman Wilson plays. So,
and Calvin was very similar, where it's not like he had one season-ending injury. Like, he got hurt in training camp. There was a thought he might come back. They held him out for a while. Then they eventually started him back to practice, and then he re-injured it. And so very similar rookie season trajectory. I think fairly similar players. Like I would have a hard time seeing Roman Wilson like getting playing time over Calvin Austin right now, even if he was healthy. Like Calvin's playing really well, so they don't do a lot of 4 wide receivers. Scotty Miller's role is probably there for the taking for a guy like Roman Wilson eventually. Will it be this season? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, that's why you're saying, like, I feel the same way. If we don't see another wide receiver injury take place, I just don't know, that he's going to crack the lineup. It's kind of like a break glass in case of emergency player for me at this point. We got asked a couple questions about players, and I was interested by the one name even being brought up, and I understand why the other one was because of the topic of your morning rush today. A lot of people talking about Jamal Agnew, but also Eric Rowe within there. Do you anticipate maybe the whole episode morning rush really, and you put out the statistic on Twitter as well, was Cordell Patterson and where the Steelers just not getting the return on investment that I think that they were hoping to get with this new kickoff rule from Cordell Patterson in that spot. Jamal Agnew's a guy that has also been a successful returner. Would it be a worthwhile thing to look at, maybe making a change there? So I think that's why people are probably asking about him.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a Week 18 game that didn't matter, I think you may see Jamal Agnew play in it, just because like it's a perfect opportunity to get a guy a couple of reps and see what he looks like. Has had a little bit of success in the NFL. The one reason it's tough is that Cordell Patterson is not just the Steelers kick returner; he's also their third running back, and so Jamal Agnew not going to be that. He's a wide receiver or a corner, sometimes not a running back. So can you scratch Cordell Patterson and dress 2 other players? And how do you have to move the other pieces of the roster around to accommodate that? They're already dressing a whole bunch of DBs and wide receivers as it is. Maybe the bench of Scotty Miller to make that happen. I don't know. Like maybe you can figure it out a way, but like Patterson still has a role. And so the other part that's interesting, now doesn't apply this week, but going forward next week, is guys like Jonathan Ward, Brandon Johnson, who are out of practice squad elevations. They reset in the playoffs, so they can use them again. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the reason those guys have been hanging around all this time. And then Eric Rowe, I mean, they're already dressing an extra DB. I don't know what they'd be doing with Euro. I mean, I don't really understand that question.
I think he developed a very niche, strong fan base in a very limited time at the end of last season. He had like 2 interceptions in 3 games. And I think that a lot of people probably just were like, hey, in a short period of time, this guy made an impression here. Now he's back. I even saw somebody saying like I would give him a helmet over like a DeMonte KZ. So like I think that's why people
I don't think I would do that.
I'm not saying that I'm on board with that. I'm just going through some of the comments, some of the stuff that I've seen on Twitter. I think that's where it comes from, is just how impressive he was jumping on a moving train at the end of last season.
I think the last thing you want to do when your defense is dealing with communication problems is start throwing guys that haven't played all year into the mix. That's going to make it worse, not better.
That's all. That is also very true. Yeah, not even looking at the player isolated and the impact he could bring, but again, you're moving more pieces around and probably creating more problems trying to, I don't even know if I'd say fix one. You're just, you're creating more issues and coupling them. Something else to do with the players that I wanted to bring up. This happened actually just shortly before we started recording. A couple team awards being given out. Alex Highsmith winning the Chief Award, and then Zach Frazier winning the Rookie of the Year for the team. Want to more so focus on, I guess we could briefly talk about Zach Frazier here. No surprises as to who I would have expected that it would have been, quite honestly. Even if you would have asked me at the beginning of the year, this would have been my answer. Even if, like, I really like Troy Fautanu and think he's going to be a good player, but at the beginning of the year, I would have said I think Zach Frazier is going to be that guy in year 1. And Alex Highsmith winning the Chief Award is what I want to focus on more here, because you could probably provide more insight into why it is Alex Highsmith taking this one home.
Yeah, just in transparency, my votes were Zach Frazier and Pat Freiermuth. I think Frazier was nearly unanimous. I don't even know who else you would pick. I mean, Mason McCormick's done well. Peyton Wilson, I guess. Beanie Bishop. those are probably the four guys that you could put into the conversation. But I thought it was pretty clearly Zach Frazier. I think it's cool that that's the award that the Steelers named after Joe Green. You think of a lot of things about Joe Green. You don't think much of his rookie season when the Steelers were absolutely terrible in 1969. And that was a year where I think, they built the foundation of the franchise. And I think it's very cool that, that's kind of what the rookies here's the award for you to live up to. This guy was a rookie and played on a terrible team and was so good that it became a dominant franchise for the next 30 years. It's longer than that now, 50 years. And name the friggin' award after him at the end of it. So good luck. See if you can live up to that. I always think that's fairly cool. The Chief Award is named after Art Rooney Sr. It's given out, both of these awards are given out by the Pittsburgh chapter of the PFWA for the player who, I'm not reading the boilerplate, obviously, but the player who is the most cooperative with the media, the most helpful to the media in terms of telling the team's story. Alex is very, I would say over several years, a very awardable player. He's always available with our time, with his time. He'll always talk to us. The thing about Alex is he's very guarded, just sort of in general as a person and as an interview. And sometimes you kind of got to pry him out of his shell a little bit. I think we've seen that here happen over the last couple of weeks as a guy that's a little less afraid to speak his mind.
Literally just yesterday, right? I mean, we were talking about how that's about as much as you're going to get out of Alex Highsmith was post Kansas City game from that perspective. So it's just funny 24 hours later that we're talking about this and you're mentioning that, that is probably as much as you'll see him outside of that shell.
Yeah. And I think there were a number of good candidates. In fact, there was a tie at one point and we had a runoff. So there were, I think we started out with a 4-way tie, and then had to run it off from there. So a number of really good candidates. I think, and I'll give the reason I voted for Pat is I
was just going to ask that. Yeah.
Almost all of the other really good candidates are on the defensive side of the ball. And so I think that makes it because there's a lot of them, none of them are all that important. You know what I'm saying? If E-Rep doesn't want to talk to me today, I can go talk to Patrick Queen or Dante Jackson or Alex Highsmith. In fact, all four of those guys' lockers are in a row in the Steelers locker room. I can just go over there and one of those guys will talk to me. And Hayden Wilson's in the middle there somewhere. With Pat, Najee Harris and George Pickens are, I will say, at times difficult to deal with. And Russell Wilson is not difficult, but it's sort of like reading from an AI prompt of what a quarterback is supposed to be saying. And then, I think Pat is the guy in that offense that's a real human being with us. And I appreciate that.
Well, certainly acknowledging the struggles they've had on the defensive side of the ball, but largely that's the unit that you've been able to, that this team has counted on more so, and they've been the more dominant side of the football. So I also think, with him being the voice, if you will, to the media from the offensive side, there's a lot more questions, and I think that there's a lot more pressure on his shoulders from that perspective because of the side of the ball.
Yeah, the questions are a lot easier when you're good. It's a lot tougher when you're struggling, and so that was my vote. But as I said, there were maybe even a half a dozen. And I feel like Cam Hayward has won it so many times now that he's sort of just been
fatigue.
Yeah, right, exactly. Where are we gonna really give it to that guy again? But certainly he could have been up there as well. So Deshaun Elliott, another really good option from the defense. So it's always an interesting process. I did note that I think last year Patrick Peterson and Deontay Johnson finished first and second in the Chief Award voting, and they're both gone this year. So I really hope that like if the Steelers trade Alex Highsmith this offseason, it is actually my fault this time. Well, actually, I didn't vote for him, so it's not my fault, but our fault. Like, blame the media then if that happened.
I think too. We might have touched on this a bit last year when we brought up Patrick Peterson and then Deontay Johnson. I remember the comments were like very surprised about Deontay being within that.
Yeah, I think people would be surprised in general. I think at the way the locker room goes, it's not always the guys you think acting the way you think they will, and that's been the case for as long as I've been on the beat. So things are not always as they seem.
Yeah. Was there anything else from today that you wanted to touch on? Whether it was something you saw, anybody?
Did we talk about Cole Holcomb? I talked to Cole a little bit, and I unlike Roman and Logan Lee, like you can make a legitimate case that Cole Holcomb is one of their best 5 inside linebackers if he's healthy.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like Roman and Logan Lee, like those guys aren't going to play unless somebody else gets hurt. I'm not saying they're going to put Cole Holcomb in the lineup. I think the timing of this makes it pretty clear that they're probably not going to. But I don't think it's this cut and dry that they shouldn't with him, right? Whereas like with those two guys, I get it. Like, rookies that haven't practiced hardly at all and haven't practiced since September are not going to be very useful at this time of year. Cole Holcomb, on the other hand, has been a really good player. I don't know. I don't know that it's so easy for me to say, yeah, definitely don't activate that guy. Mark Robinson's been playing really well on special teams. I think Tyler Matakevich,
but he was playing some defensive snaps as well.
Yeah,
Mark Robinson
against Baltimore. Yeah. I guess it would be like him or Matakevich that you're looking at in terms of like, or maybe Jeremiah Moon in terms of finding somebody to cut. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, well, because I'm thinking about I don't want to obviously have an injury take place, but I'm just thinking if you have an injury to a Patrick Queen or a Peyton Wilson, one of the guys that you asked to do some stuff in coverage, like I would probably, and I don't know how Cole's moving in terms of laterally or if there's anything from his coverage instincts that has been impacted by this injury. But I would think more so if you're getting Cole Holcomb back to the level that he was at before, if that's the same player you're getting, he's more, equipped to fill in a role like that than in a Landon Roberts, then a Mark Robinson, then a Tyler Matakevich. So yeah, I'm certainly intrigued by what he would look like going back into a game setting.
Yeah, I am too. I think that's the one where I think, that's a real NFL player for sure. Not to say that Roman Wilson probably isn't, but I just think the situation makes that idea a lot more attractive. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was sort of the notable omission here is that Troy Fautanu is not in this group. We had talked about him as being a guy that could potentially return for the postseason. Now seems like that is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. That actually hadn't crossed my mind until you just mentioned that. But yeah, this seems like this would have been, if they were, opening up the window for these guys, he would have probably just been within this group of guys. So, dang. Another loss, which have we talked about that? And like, you look at the contributions that they got from like last year's rookie class, right? Imagine like they had 2 lost seasons within this year's rookie class. Imagine if you were able to get Troy Fautanu, if you had that contribution, if you had the contributions of Roman Wilson. I mean, they didn't get anything from their 1st and 3rd round picks.
Didn't get anything from their 1st and 3rd. Didn't get anything from their day 3 picks at all, right? Did any of those guys do anything?
Oh, right. Ryan Watts, Logan Lee, and then Beanie was undrafted. So yeah.
So like, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think there's different ways you could look at it. It's obviously a bad thing that they lost those years, but I think when you look at the way I think that's a thing that a lot of people are missing when you're talking about building this team is that like, when you're looking at improving from one year to the next, your 1st round draft pick is probably your best chance to do that. And I think the Steelers have gotten better from last year to this year, and they did that without their 1st round draft pick. And I think that's really difficult to do. And next year, it's like they're going to have 2. Like they're going to get Troy Fautanu, and they're going to get somebody else. And so I think that's I think when you're looking at the idea of how does this team get from where it is now to where it wants to be next year, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but the idea is to figure out a way that it might. I think that should give you a lot of hope that you basically got 2 firsts and 2 thirds coming to you in next year's draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that a lot. All right, so that's next year. Alan, if you don't have anything else, I want to take a look at some of the stuff in 2024, like I mentioned, that we went through on here, which was interesting because I didn't really think about it like this until just now sitting here. But with where we started the podcast at in 2023, it wasn't obviously early in the year. Like it was kind of like already training camp going on. Like I know that we had discussed doing the podcast and stuff before, but by the time we actually got rolling, like you were sitting in the dugout at training camp and we just kind of got rolling right into the Steelers season. So this is the first one we went through like an off season with you guys and everything like that. And it was interesting to do so. Obviously brought a ton of guests on here, had E-Rob on here, had Pat Fryermuth, who you mentioned earlier, on here, which is really cool experiences. I got to come out to training camp with you and experience what that was like and get sunburnt and have a new appreciation for what the daily grind is for you on the beat. Just a lot of really cool stuff happened in 2024, which makes me that much more excited about what's going to be coming in 2025.
Yeah, man, we weren't even sure if we could do this over the offseason last January. And I was actually looking the other day at our most watched videos of the year, and I think one of them is me in the snow in Buffalo before the playoff game.
Yeah.
That feels like so long ago, but yeah, I mean, we didn't have any idea if this was going to work, if we were going to be able to have a year-round podcast. And now I think I'm really excited. Honestly, like I know it's the playoffs are around the corner, and obviously fired up about that. But like, I kind of already catch myself looking forward to this offseason because I think it's going to be a lot of fun talking about going to Mobile again and doing all the sort of things that we did last year. And now that we know it works, I'm real excited to see how much better we can make it the second time around.
Yeah, I think it's different. Like I enjoy the challenge of figuring out what we're going to talk about every day and doing it differently. Again, like, had we shut things down for the off season and came back during the season, I think a lot of people would have just like understood that that's the way that it was going to work. But it was a challenge to do this thing daily during the off season and really enjoyed it, like you said. So, shout out to all the people that came on here, Jenna, Chris, Donnie Football. We had Brandon Rossai, the voice of the intro, come on the podcast during that period of time as well. So there's just a lot of cool guests that we had on, like I mentioned, D-Rob, Pat, and a lot of those shows too. Like, I think what's cool about them is they don't have an expiration date. You can go back and watch them now because the conversation wasn't necessarily centered around something that was just like time specific. So we have a playlist for this show. You can go back and check those out. But yeah, I'm really fired up for 2025, mainly because I can see the growth that took place in 2024. Looking at this, and this is literally the first time that I've looked at this, the videos in 2024, and this is just from a video perspective. I could probably pull up the audio analytics as we sit here too. Got 2.298 million views in 2024. We gained over 4,000 subscribers this year, which was a 106% increase from 2023. So yeah, big year in 2024 for this podcast, obviously, but that's the entire channel as well. So we appreciate the support and the entirety of the thing.
Yeah, and I'm really just excited about the continued growth of the channel in general. Like I think we started the Morning Rush this year. I'm always trying to find what's next. And I think the fact that there's so many of you out there that have such an appetite for just us talking ball has been really cool. And it's honestly, it's like in terms of work and the things I do every day, this is probably my favorite thing that I do every day. Like this is the best part of my work day.
I mean, and we all know it's because you get to see and talk to me, but I assume that there's a small part of that. A very small part of that is because of the audience. It's mainly me, but
it's mostly just the music. If I'm being perfectly honest, it's just the theme music. It's that good.
Hey, yeah, it is. It is that good. And people, I remember, we don't get those comments anymore. I think people are now just completely on board with it 100% across the board. Because if you remember early on, people are like, why do you guys always talk about the intro music like every episode? We don't get those anymore because I think people are they accept it and they agree that it is the best.
We've worn them down.
We have worn them down. Also, yeah, I'm looking through some more stuff here. So yeah, over a 100% increase, both video and audio from 2023 to 2024. And you mentioned the other, kind of ventures that have started on the channel. Like Aaron just started doing his thing with Steelers Spotlight. So I can't wait to see what happens in 2025 with that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be great.
So
I'm really excited about that.
Very excited about that. We always ask you guys in the comments to let us know. We're always interested in diving into more of what you guys want, obviously, whether it's questions or topics for the episode, but just on the channel and like content in general. And certainly that is going to be the case when we get to the offseason with what we're talking about. Something else that I'm interested in, not just what you want to have talked about, maybe throw some guests out there and we'll try to see what we can do. Who would you like to see on the channel in terms of like collaborations or crossover stuff? Let us know on that as well. Alan, is there anything that you wanted to say to like kind of recap the 2024 here that hasn't already been said?
No, man, I'm really, this has been a tough year for journalism. If you've got people out there in this field you care about, I'm sure you've probably heard, some rumors or whispers or whatever, but, Google's made a lot of changes to its algorithm. Twitter basically won't let tweets with links show up on your feed anymore unless you really go out of your way to find them. It's never been harder to get people to engage in your stuff as a journalist in a way that eventually brings money on the table. And I'm just really thankful for this podcast and this audience, because I feel like this has been something that we've become able to depend on and say, hey, like whatever else is happening, we're growing right here. And I think that's really awesome. And I don't take it for granted, but I'm very appreciative that we're able to count on such an awesome audience all the time.
Yeah, I mean that has obviously been great. I love seeing the growth, and because of it says more than what those numbers say to me. Like the fact that anybody cares about what we're talking about is just awesome to me. Like the fact that this is a team that I grew up loving, I get to talk about every single day, and people actually care about what is being said on this show. And that's just an insane thought to me in itself to think about. So appreciate everybody that watches or listens every single day to this. I just have so much fun doing it. Like I don't feel like I'm doing anything else outside of having a conversation about my favorite football team on a daily basis. And I don't know what could possibly be better than that.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
So that's where I will leave it. I know this is a little bit shorter of an episode, but that's kind of all we got for now, unless you have anything else, Alan. I think we kind of put a bow on it.
No, yeah, I think we've got it. Normal schedule tomorrow, I think, despite the holiday. Steelers have practice a little bit earlier, so maybe we'll be again in the daylight, but expecting normal stuff from us tomorrow. And then, another game right around the corner.
There we go. Also, I had a couple people that said they watch or listen to this, and it's funny because they reached out to me. Alan, I mean, this is the worst possible time. I think that's what my agent told me, to be trying to buy a house. At some point, I'm going to be in a different setting. We won't have to worry about the lighting down here, but we did get a comment back. I mentioned this was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. For Randy Tobias, he mentioned my lighting. I was like, you know what? Let me try something different. So I turned out the lights in my basement, just put this backlight behind me. Then I have a ring light in front of me, and he's appreciative. So this is for you.
And I'm going to say, your skin has never looked better.
I appreciate that. But all right. Anyways, let's get out of here. Alan, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account. SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the word so I can get paid. Sign up for promo code, or sign up for SN Plus using promo code Allen10, and you get 10% off the annual subscription. It is worth it. It really helps us as an outlet do all the cool things that you're going to want us to do, like travel to playoff games, go to the Senior Bowl, maybe go to the Super Bowl. That's the first time I put that out in public here this year, but I'm trying to make that happen. So, see how it goes.
Will the Steelers be playing in it?
Well, I mean, obviously I'll be there if they're playing it, but I mean, sort of regardless.
Yeah, no, I got you. Like, subscribe.
Maybe the Pro Bowl. We've got, what, 4, 5 Steelers probably going to the Pro Bowl? 4 at least.
Yeah.
Boz, Cam, TJ. Maybe Christian Kuntz. All right.
I was just saying, Christian Kuntz is making a push as well. I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. You'll find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.